When Thomas Cromwell was arrested in June of 1540, his teenage son Gregory faced the very real threat of losing everything. Just over a month later, Cromwell was executed on trumped-up charges of treason and heresy. And yet, in a twist that would make even the most seasoned courtiers' heads spin, Gregory not only survived, but he thrived at the Tudor court. So what exactly happened to the children of those who were branded traitors? Were they shunned, stripped of their inheritances, tossed aside like yesterday's stale trencher bread? Or did some manage to pull off an unexpected comeback? Today we're going to talk about what happened to the children of executed and disgraced nobility and give some specific examples and talk about some redemption arcs and some comeback stories. So grab your coffee or your water and let's get started. Hey friend, welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am your host Heather and I have been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009. Labor Day 2009 was when my first show came out. So actually, my show gets a driver's license this year. I think they turned 16. So that's fun. My show's like growing up into its own little person or something. Anyway, today, like I said, we are talking about the children of executed nobles and traitors. So let's get started. First, let's talk legalities. In Tudor England, when a nobleman was convicted of treason, he didn't just face the executioner's axe, he also got hit with something called an attainder. This delightful bit of legalese meant that all of his titles and lands went poof, reverting back to the crown. If our unlucky nobleman had underage heirs, they instantly became wards, essentially the property of the monarch or whoever the king decided to grant their wardship to. A famous example of that was Lady Margaret Beaufort, of course, who became the ward to Edmund and Jasper Tudor, Edmund Tudor, who then married her. So these wardships could be sold or handed out like party favors to the monarch's allies. The lucky recipient got control over the heir's marriage, lands, and education. For the children of traitors, it often meant being shipped off to live with strangers while their ancestral estates were picked clean by the crown. Not exactly a fairy tale ending. But here's the thing, for the offspring of executed nobles, a parent's spectacular downfall wasn't always the final curtain. Sometimes it was just a very bumpy little detour on the road to power and influence. Take our friend, the aforementioned Gregory Cromwell. When his father, the once powerful Thomas Cromwell, Earl of Essex, king's right-hand man, was sent to the scaffold, Gregory had every reason to fear the worst. He'd enjoyed a meteoric rise alongside of his dad, getting a cushy spot in Henry's privy chamber. He was married to Elizabeth Seymour, the sister of Henry's beloved Queen Jane. But then it all went sideways. With Thomas Cromwell convicted of treason, Gregory could have lost it all, his titles, his land, even his freedom. Except he didn't. Somehow, Gregory managed to keep a grip on his estates and his place at court, even while Rafe Sadler and Risley and all the people who were associated with Cromwell were under suspicion. Just a few months after his father's execution, Gregory actually got a promotion. Henry, in a move that probably raised a few eyebrows, made him Baron Cromwell in his own right, not just restoring his father's title, but actually giving him his own. So what was going on here? Was it Henry's guilt over executing his once trusty minister, or a bit of pragmatic politics thanks to Gregory's marital alliance with the Seymours? Or was it just a really impressive display of groveling on Gregory's part? Whatever the reason, Gregory's story shows that even in the cutthroat world of Tudor politics, a traitor's child could still come out on top if they played their cards right and had a generous helping of royal favor. Not everyone was as lucky as our friend Gregory. Take the children of Margaret Pole, Countess of Salisbury. Margaret had the misfortune of being born a Plantagenet. She was the daughter of the Duke of Clarence. She had a lineage that could and did make Henry VIII very nervous. And in 1537, famously, at the ripe old age of 67, Margaret was executed for treason. Now, her daughter Ursula had married into the Stafford family and managed to keep a relatively low profile. But her sons, not so much. Of course, Henry Pole, Lord Montague, went to the block in 1539, right before his mother. His son, Henry Pole the Younger, spent decades languishing in the Tower before finally dying there under Elizabeth I. There was, of course, her other son, Reginald, who became a cardinal, was served under Mary, so, he turned out okay. But if you thought those other ones were bad, wait till you hear about Arthur Pole. He also died in the Tower, but not before cooking up a harebrained scheme to overthrow Queen Elizabeth and claim the throne. And of course, spoiler alert, it didn't work out. I did a video on him. You can check that out. The Poles were a prime example of how the children of traitors could be used as political pawns or just left to rot in the Tower when they became too inconvenient. It was a very far cry from Gregory Cromwell's very soft landing. So speaking of people who ran afoul of Henry VIII, let's talk about Anne Boleyn. We all know what happened to Anne herself, but what about her relatives? Obviously, her daughter Elizabeth was protected. It wouldn't do to execute the king's own child, even if he had declared her a bastard. But Anne's siblings and their children had a bit more to worry about. Mary Boleyn, Anne's sister, had been Henry's mistress before Anne caught his eye, famously. While Mary had faded into obscurity by the time of Anne's execution, her children, Henry and Catherine Carey, actually did quite well for themselves. Catherine, in particular, remained a figure at court. It's also possible that she was Henry's illegitimate daughter, and so that's why she did so well, but that's a different story. The Howard side of the family, on the other hand, faced a bit more turbulence. Anne's former sister-in-law, Lady Rochford, was executed alongside Henry's fifth wife, Catherine Howard. The whole Howard clan had a cloud hanging over them after that. Thomas Howard, the Duke of Norfolk, and his son were some of the final scheduled executions. Of course, Thomas Howard survived because Henry died right before Thomas Howard was supposed to be executed, but his son was executed. He flew the banner of the monarch. It was implying that he was claiming the throne for himself. It all turned very messy. So the Howards, they did not have a very good time after the death of Anne Boleyn. As for Anne's mother, Elizabeth Boleyn, she pretty much disappeared from court life after watching two of her children die on the scaffold. But notably, no direct punishment was handed down to Anne's surviving relatives. Now, if you are planning your own Tudor comeback story, you actually can survive the cutthroat politics at court, or at least the reenacted version, by joining us at Tudorcon 2025. Early bird pricing for in-person tickets is ending on Thursday, the 31st, at the end of the month. So you can grab yours now, englandcast.com/TudorCon. We have a handful of in-person tickets left. It's history, music, feasting, friends in Richmond, Virginia, October 3rd through 5th, Agecroft Hall. Again, englandcast.com/TudorCon, and we hope to see you there. So we've seen that being born on the wrong side of the king's favor could lead to everything from a slap on the wrist to a one-way ticket to the Tower. But some families managed to pull off a multi-generational redemption arc that would make even the most jaded Tudor courtier say, wait, weren't they just traitors a hot second ago? Perhaps the most impressive comeback story is that of Lettice Nolles. Now, Lettice was the granddaughter of Mary Boleyn. Yeah, the same Mary Boleyn whose sister Anne was executed by Henry VIII. Lettice later married Robert Dudley, the great love of Queen Elizabeth I's life. So that put Lettice squarely on the Queen's bad side. But despite all of that, Lettice's son, Robert Devereux, went on to become the powerful Earl of Essex and Elizabeth's favorite, perhaps her final favorite. But then he too lost his head for treason after he tried to rebel against her, lead a rebellion in 1601, and that did not work out. So, oops. So what can we learn from all of these stories of treason and tower time and the occasional triumphant return? For starters, being the child of an executed traitor in Tudor England was like playing the high-stakes game of snakes and ladders. One minute you're riding high on your family's noble name, and the next you're in the tower hoping the king forgets you exist. But sometimes, if you had the right connections or enough royal favor, you could climb slowly back up to the top. The key seems to have been keeping your head down, literally, not getting too ambitious, and hoping that the monarch's mood shifted in your favor. It didn't hurt to marry well either, just ask the Cromwells. In the end, though, the taint of treason was hard to get rid of completely. Even families that made it back to the heights of power often found themselves facing the axe again a generation or two later. Tudor England was a brutal place, but it was also fickle. Loyalties could shift fast, and the names that were poison under one monarch might be gold under the next, like the Poles, for example, under Mary I. The sins of the father could ruin you, or they could be repackaged for politics. So, which child of a disgraced Tudor figure would you like to learn more about? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed it, I sure would appreciate a press that like button. It helped feed the algorithm and get our content to even more people. And I hope I earned your subscription to my channel where I put out content on these weird dark corners of Tudor history on the regular. If you would like to keep watching content like this, here's a video on Ursula Pole that you might enjoy digging into her life. Here's one that YouTube thinks you'll like. Thanks so much for being here, my friend. Thanks for spending this time with me. Remember, you are deeply loved. I am so glad we share the planet with each other. You make the planet a better place. I will be back again very soon. And until then, don't forget to drink your water. All right, bye-bye, friend. Talk to you soon.